Hey guys, welcome back to the Let's Talk podcast. In this episode, we're going to be continuing the depression series, discussing opening up about mental health.
Yeah, and as always, I'd just like to say these are just our own thoughts and opinions, and we're speaking through our own experiences. So to get it started, what do you feel like was one of the key elements or components of you being able to finally feel could open up about your mental health and your struggles?
For me, in my opinion, one of the biggest things that I had to do is actually admit it to myself that something wasn't right, that I felt something was wrong. Like, I think there's a difference between, being aware of it and it's just on your mind and, you feel down some days, but actually sitting back and realising and admitting it to yourself is so important.
And why do you feel that was so important to accept it within yourself?
I think that's the first step to opening up, in my opinion. Like, how do you, open up about something you've not really admitted in yourself yet?
I feel understand what you mean in the sense that, say if like 10 people were telling me something, I could believe them, but until I, fully accept it within myself, then for me, in my own journey, then it would be like, okay, now I feel like I can do something about it, or because I feel like I've gained that acceptance within myself, okay, that something isn't right, and then that's when I feel I could truly apply myself to make a change to that, because I was ready in my mindset, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think it definitely takes a lot of courage to do that. To actually open up, the courage it takes to do that is, oh my god, I can't even explain how much courage it takes anyone to open up about something that's so vulnerable.
So when you did finally admit it to yourself, you knew this wasn't something right with yourself, and I'm assuming that's when you started sort of like looking into depression and then things like that. Were you then, once you in that moment accepted it, did you feel then ready to tell other people and like verbally or open up about it, or was that a different step for you?
No, I think you're right there, really. Like, I think once I accepted it in myself that something's not right, something's definitely wrong, and being at one with knowing that, I think that took me on to the next step then, where I was not straight away. I don't think I could have been like, oh, I want to tell someone now, I want to get it off my chest, I want to speak to people.
Yeah,
it's a sense of I was ready to start thinking about it.
Yeah,
because before I admitted it to myself, I didn't even think about telling anyone.
Would that have been like if someone had come up to you before that point and said, open up and tell someone, would you have instantly like sort of gone within yourself like there's not a chance?
Yeah, I would have completely.
And do you think that's a part of, in a sense, accepting it in yourself, is you then feel ready in yourself to actually admit it because you're ready within yourself? It doesn't matter if anyone else is. It's about what you feel.
Yeah, exactly that. It's so personal, and you should never do anything you don't feel comfortable doing.
Yeah.
And until you're ready. I think that's the point, isn't it? Is that it doesn't matter how long that takes at all. Like, it could take 6 months, it could take a year, it could take 5 years. But as long as you're becoming acceptance to it, you're gaining that, you're like admitting it to yourself.
Yeah.
That's the important thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, as you said, that getting to that point of acceptance in yourself, as you said, that is so courageous and so admirable, because it's not an easy thing to admit like problems or faults within yourself. And I feel, just thinking back to something we were just discussing before, was in a sense that acknowledging to yourself, okay, there is something wrong, and then finally speaking to someone. I know from my experience with it is that I accepted it in myself, okay, there isn't something right, and I did feel like I wanted to tell people, but I also felt like I don't understand it within myself. So I felt like even if I went to tell someone, I don't even know what I'd say to them, in a sense. So I feel like I took time after that point of acceptance to sort of even just try and get like a basic understanding, so I could comfortably within myself, or say go up to someone and be like, this is what's wrong with me, but at least explain it in a way that relayed it so they could understand at a basic level, so I wasn't confusing them as well as confusing myself.
Yeah, I completely understand it. It's like you want to go to them with something to say. You do want to have some knowledge or idea of what you think is going on, rather than walking in a room saying, I don't know what's going on, help me. What they're going to do.
I want to, but I need to know where you need help, because there's especially as we've talked about with depression, because it's such a complex and clever thing. It's not an easy thing to understand at all. And I think one of the key things you mentioned again was that it can take time, but it's okay to take time. As much as, you know, when I was suffering, I wanted to get better. I wanted to in myself go about it the right way and not maybe rush into it. And I could have made things worse myself if I'd have chose just sort of like the wrong paths and so on.
Yeah.
And you know, and speaking of that, so you've got to the point now where you accepted it in yourself. And I know in the first episode of the podcast we mentioned about how we sort of researched and discovered what depression was and so on. So when you were doing your research and you admitted to yourself, how did you eventually come to open up? And do you feel that, you know, the acceptance, the research, did you feel they were contributing factors that helped you get to the point of being finally able to open up?
Yeah, I think when I look back now, I see it.
Yeah.
But in the moment, I would never think, you know, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to open up.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it didn't work like that. Like now I look back, it does. I think definitely when all the different stages in terms of me just thinking, oh, you know, something's not right here, you know, I'm feeling down, etc. And then to me looking online, to doing a bit of research, and you know, like, oh, what's this? And then admitting it to myself, doing more research, and then, you know, eventually building that courage up to opening up. Yeah, I think all that contributed to opening up, definitely.
Yeah. And so, who did you, how did you go about first opening up to someone you felt ready within yourself?
Well, it took a lot of courage, as we said. Oh my God! And you know, it's so difficult to do. It's you know, it's probably one of the hardest things I'd say that I've done in my life, like to actually push yourself, because you're putting your vulnerability out there. So I opened up to yourself, as you're well aware.
Yeah.
And I remember it took a while to build up to actually even think about instigate telling you.
Yeah.
So you know, I think from memory it took like a couple of weeks, and then I remember messaging you, telling you like I want to speak to you. You know, like there's something important I want to speak to you about. And then I remember sending you a massive message,
Yeah.
explaining, you know, how I'm feeling, what are the thoughts of, like, you know, what I think's happening, what I think I'm going through, etc. And then you replied to that. I can't actually remember what you've said to that, but I remember it was really good and positive. And I know we spoke about it in person the next day. And I think something I want to say there, you know, you don't have to open up to someone in person as well. Like I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, as much as courage I had, I don't think I could have done that. It was too much. So, you know, I messaged you and I felt comfortable doing that. And then when we did meet and talk about it in person, I felt a lot more comfortable then, because it's kind of, you know, it was out there and we knew what we were going to be talking about and how I'm feeling. But I think for me telling you what was really good is that you were going through an experience, like your own experiences, what I didn't know as well.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I found a lot of comfort in that because you understood quite a lot.
No, definitely, and I think it was. I feel that it helped. It's helped our bond a lot. I feel it. You know, ironically, depression was one of the toughest times of our life, but from it, we've gained one of the best things in our friendship with it, and I feel that definitely helped grow us closer. But as you mentioned, I remember receiving the text from you, and then, as you say, I was going through, you know, my own version of depression in a sense. So, and you opening up, you know, in a way, gave us both an outlet to open up, because then I remember, as you say, I told you, I'm going through the same thing, and weirdly, I'm glad I was, because it allowed me to at least relate in some ways with you and have a sort of a basic understanding. And I feel like we were maybe at similar points in our journeys, and it just in a way felt like it came together at a really, really good time for each other. And I feel for myself, where I was at that point, I feel I'd opened up already as well. So because as I mentioned, I'd gone to the doctors, and that's who I opened up first to. Was telling the doctors, because you know, in myself I'd felt okay. I feel I know what it is. I wonder, and then that's who I felt comfortable opening up to. And I think just off that quickly is that it helps show that, you know, in a sense, there's more than one option, one way, one person that you can, who you can open to, or ways you can open up to. There isn't just like, oh, it has to be this person, or it has to be this way. It's wherever you feel is best for yourself.
Yeah, and you know, you don't have to open up to one person. You know, you can open up to multiple people, and it's just who you feel comfortable confiding in, I think,
Yeah.
and trusting.
No, definitely. And as you said, there's so many options. Like there's loved ones, there's friends, there's online services, like mental health charities, doctors. There is so many options. And so with that, what do you feel like the impact for you was of finally being able to open up? You know, how did it make you feel, and do you feel in a way it helped your depression at all?
I think personally, when it came to opening up, for me, I remember my mind leading up to it. It was kind of make or break, in a sense of, what if I open up and they just don't care, or they just think I'm being stupid, or they say that I'm silly.
Yeah.
And I think as a person, for me, that would have put me right back in my shell.
Yeah.
Like, I would have put an extra layer barrier on there. I'm probably not opened up to someone else for, God knows how long.
Yeah.
So that's why I think opening up is so important, and who you open up to is very important, and the response that person gives is, again, so important.
No, I definitely agree, and I feel for me, I agree with your how you feel the impact is, but I also felt for me that when I finally sort of accepted myself, and especially when I went to the doctors and they helped tell me it definitely was this, it helped in a sense put a label on it and help me identify it. And I feel one of the biggest torments on my mind when I was suffering before this point was, in a sense, the unknown. Because I feel like when it was unknown, I didn't know what it was. I knew there was something wrong, but I was like, what is it? And I couldn't really do anything to make it better or relieve it or anything, because I was like, well, I don't know what it is. But then finally, even at a base level, understanding, okay, this is what it is, it took away I guess maybe the fear or the scariness of it, because it's not, okay, it's not this big bad monster anymore. It's like, okay, it's still, it's still a problem, but it's identified now and the light's on it. And going through the doctors, they helped provide different pathways for solutions, and it helped me and myself feel like positive towards dealing with it and confidence. Like, okay, I know what you are now, I'm coming for you, in a sense. And I feel that was one of the biggest impacts that I felt when I was finally able to open up.
Yeah, and I think that's key, just to have that understanding, and when you can put that label on it, it's a relief in some way, isn't it?
No, it is. And also, even from this point to, now we've come through our journey in depression, I'm one of the biggest advocates for speaking to people and talking. Even now, as much as we say, we've been through our journey with depression, there's still elements that we deal with every single day. And with who I am as a person, I know how much it helps me. Like, I speak to you every day and tell you things, and how much it leaves my mind. And a few years ago, when my depression was at its deepest, the way I like to describe it was that it felt like my depression was a dripping tap, like in a bath, in a sense. So the plug was in and it was dripping and slowly filling up. And as it filled up, the higher it got, the more depressed I got, the more moody I got. And then that could build up for days, weeks, months. And I know you experienced it with me. But then when I finally was like, I need to tell someone, and get that urge, and I tell you, it felt like when I spoke to you, it pulled the plug, drained it. But then the plug went back in, and then it started dripping up and filling again. But that, I think, helped give me an insight into how much speaking to people helped me, because even in the depths of my depression, speaking helped so much for me personally.
Yeah, I think that's to be honest, I think that's a really good analogy to explain that. And like I say, I think when you are talking to people and getting everything off your mind, off your chest, and how you're feeling, it's just a relief, isn't it? It's a relief. That's amazing.
And I think it's a really warm and comforting feeling when you do find someone who you feel comfortable speaking to, and they give the same back, just knowing you've got someone there. And I feel, what does my nana say now? Something like, a problem shared is a problem halved, or something like that. And I feel it's definitely true. And that's not you putting the burden onto someone else, because I never felt like that when you opened up to me, and I feel you didn't either. But loved ones, friends, charities, doctors will want to help you, and
support
it makes them happiness in helping you, and they will be there. And that's the beautiful thing about it. So speaking about opening up to people, I think you started to speak about it before, but how important do you feel it is if you're someone who is being opened up to, so to speak?
So the person you're telling?
Yeah, so say you open up to me, how important would my reaction be?
I think it's just as important as how much courage it's taken for the person to open up.
Yeah.
Because it's probably, like, going off my example of me telling you, it took me weeks weeks and weeks and weeks to build up the courage to tell you.
Well, even before that, it probably took years to get to that point as a whole with your journey with depression.
Exactly, yeah. So it took me so long to tell you, and I went to open up to you, and I wanted it to be okay. Like,
Yeah.
I wanted you to be engaged and listen. Like, I think that's the prime thing that someone can do, is just let them know you're listening. Like, I remember when I told you, at the start, you listened, and you was listening to understand. And someone could, for example, open up to someone, and they might not have the blessing we did in terms of you getting what I'm going through, etc. But you can still listen. You don't have to say, "Oh, I'm feeling like that too." I'm going through like that's something similar. It's just listening and just knowing that someone's listening to you, and you can trust them. And whenever you do need to go to them and talk to them, and they'll just listen, that's so important.
It is. I feel it's not about being perfect in a sense; it's about being positive. So I feel like if you had come to me and I wasn't going through it myself, I'd have hoped to, like you say, just at least listened and be like, okay, I'll always be here if you. I can't offer. I'm not a counselor. It's not even about being a counselor. It's just, like you say, about just being positive, and I feel supported. And at the same time, everyone's going through their own things and their own lives, and sometimes the person you might want to speak to might not be available, but it's still a help. I know when, say, sometimes I'd be going through something, I know I couldn't get hold of you. It's like, just calm down. And then eventually when I could, and it's like, okay, I feel better now. But I agree with you that definitely it's a two-way street, and opening up is a major thing, but also how the person who's listening reacts is just as important step. Because as you said, it felt like it was a sort of a make or break, and
Yeah.
Thankfully we don't have to know, but if I'd responded negatively, you could have, like you said, gone back into your shell, and it could have been years again before you felt ready to. But I feel also for the person listening, it's not like there's this immense pressure and putting on you. It's just,
no.
I feel comfortable with you. If you can just listen, I feel that would be amazing.
Yeah, just to get this off your chest, and the first person you tell, whoever that is, it is so important. But
and you should be so proud of yourself for getting to that point as well. And in a sense, it shows you can do it, and you can get through it. And I think that's the message we also sort of portray, is always to remember that you're not alone. There are if you are going through any sort of mental health struggles or issues, there is so many options available. As we said, there's friends, family, loved ones, doctors. There's so many different charities. We've put some in the description below, all different links to ones in a few different countries. But as Dan experienced, just going onto Google can bring up so much. But please, guys, just never give up, and it does get better. We're nothing special. We're just two everyday people, but we got through it, and if we can, you definitely can. So keep the strength, guys, and be proud of yourselves, and you will get through it. And we hope this podcast can help in any way that it can, and we'll all go through this journey together, because we are all one, we're all equal, and we will all be here for each other.
Yeah. What he said, I couldn't have done better than
that. Giving it some little zones, they're giving the speech there. No, but honestly, guys, as always, thank you so much for listening. We truly do appreciate it. If you could give this video a like and a share, it'd mean the world to us. If you could hit the subscribe button and do Dan's little favourite thing and turn on the notifications bell, so
yes.
a little pops up animation. If you have any comments or thoughts on this episode, or you would share any experiences, please leave them below or on any of our social medias.
So we're available on all social medias under the username @LT Podcast Online. We're also on all podcast directories, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and also YouTube. If you want any more information at all, just check the description. And as always, guys, thank you very much for watching.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Take it easy.